Hello and welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo Recruitment. In today's episode, we welcomed on Maxine Henry, the Group HR Manager of Dyer Engineering based up in Stanley. I couldn't wait for this episode. Dyer are a key client of Theo James. Couldn't wait to interview Maxine. It's been a long time coming. If you are a senior or indeed HR professional of any level or operations professional, this is the episode for you. We talked in detail about EVP, employer value proposition, and making sure you utilize everything in your business to maximize recruitment and retention, in particular training, internal training to make sure that people are progressing in the business at the right rate and managers are getting the right training they need to manage their staff, which also will help your retention and recruitment. We talk about ESG and building a community, which obviously will benefit the business, and so much more. Partnerships, management, everything you'd hope and expect in this episode. I really enjoyed it and I'm sure you will too. So please sit back and watch or listen. As ever, please do me the honor of just clicking that like and subscribe button. It really helps grow the show. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the episode. Right, a massive warm welcome this morning to Maxi Henry, the Group HR Director of Dyer Engineering. Maxine, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. You've given me a promotion already, so I take that.
I've literally just asked you what it is. I've just repeated it, but we'll keep going with it. It was too much of a mouthful. Maxine has begged me to come on this podcast for many months, but we've finally got her on. But no, I have begged her for many months, and she's finally come more than accepted. So looking forward to this, as are you, Maxine, I'm sure.
Yes.
Right. So the first question is a question I ask everyone who comes on. What does it mean to you to be a leader?
What does it mean to me to be a leader? I think for me, and I often sum up my leadership style, is that I'm quietly confident leader. So I'm not an in-your-face leader. I'm not a shouty. Occasionally I'm shouty, but generally I'm not. And I think the most important thing to be a leader is to empower those around you to enable them to make good decisions. So for me, being a leader is setting examples and living by those examples, and your behaviors display what you want in an organization. So that's what it means to me to be a leader, to set examples.
Yeah, we like that. And I like that phrase, that sort of that quietly confident leader, as you put that, because I don't think people necessarily think management will be, and I don't think it used to be that case, but I think we're seeing more of that now because people are almost confident they don't have to be this dictatorship, screaming, shouting leader. And I think, have you seen that change over time? Have you seen your style change over time, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think the leaders that I have more respect for are the ones that don't have all the answers and the ones that they admit don't have all the answers. I have my area of specialism, people, culture. That's what I bring to the party. And I openly admit I don't know everything. And, people who work with me will hear me say, well, every day is a school day. And it's something I say quite frequently. Sometimes I say it tongue in cheek, but really I mean it. There's always something that you learn from somebody else at work.
Do you, because I struggle with that sometimes. And probably not now, actually, to some extent, but I struggle with that piece where you mentioned there about in terms of not that necessarily every day is a school day. Internally, I struggled with, I thought I needed to be the one that had all the answers. I guess that something like, COVID's probably a good example, going through something like that where didn't have the answers, but people were literally looking up at you going, give me answers. And I felt that pressure to need to give them the information I didn't have. Do you know what I mean? But I think did you feel that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I still struggle with that because I'm the most senior people leader in our business. And people look to me to go, well, what do you think, Maxine? And there's a split second where I go, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But I think if you can always give yourself an opportunity and create space for yourself to think for more than a split second, you do know the answer. And you might not know the answer, but you know the questions to ask the people who are asking you what the answer is. Because 9 times out of 10, they've already formulated the answer and they're just looking for you for guidance. So if you can kind of open the gates for them to think and enable them to make the decision, and all you have to do is guide them and keep them on the right path, really. I think that they're the qualities that I think make a good leader, that I look up to and that I respect. But I also think that, you know, people, that element is changing now. And you know, everybody brings something, their area of specialism, but you can always bring something to the table because you've almost got fresh eyes if you're looking at a different area. You know, if I look at ops, you know, it's completely different to what I do. But sometimes if I'm talking to one of the site leads and I ask questions like, well, why are you doing it like that? Well, we've always just done it like that.
Yeah.
And you go, well, what about? They're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. I didn't give them an answer, but I just changed their thinking.
Yeah, and actually, what I'm picking up there, which I think is key, and it's so hard, is the question piece to manage by asking questions. And you probably subconsciously there when you were essentially giving instruction, you did that by asking them the question, so they essentially came up with it got them thinking what the result was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
It's clever mind room. It's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes it's actually harder, I think, if you know the answer because you just want to give it. So you can
yes,
get on with your day. It's just,
yeah.
that's the tricky
It
one.
is. It's much more time consuming.
Yeah.
Allowing people to kind of come up with their own ideas. But I think in the long run, you know, you sort of, you're developing them as individuals as well. And I suppose ultimately that's what I'm here to do.
100%. I like to understand why you are where you are, and I think it'd be interesting briefly to go right back to the start in terms of, you know, was HR a profession, an industry you always wanted to get into? Is something you fell into? How did that come about?
I suppose, like many people, I left school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So bummed around for a bit. Got an apprenticeship randomly in IT. Did that for 18 months. Decided that wasn't for me. Bummed around a little bit more. And then I got a job for battery manufacturing in the sales department, and I was doing quite well. But I quickly learned that wasn't for me either. So I, I liken myself to the drummer of the band. I will keep your beat of your organization, but I'm not your lead singer. And I think to be successful in sales, you need to be lead singers. And that's just, it's not my skill set. It's not an area where I'm particularly comfortable all of the time. But what I did enjoy was, you know, making relationships, connections. And I enjoy talking to people and kind of that conversational piece or the consultative element of sales. So I enjoyed that. And then on a whim, so while I was working in sales, I did a HND in business management. Did I do a HND or HNC? One of the two.
We'll give you
HNC. One of those. It was a long time ago, Mark. It's over 20 years ago. So I did that, and I really enjoyed the people element of that. So I went home one day and I said to my mum, because I'm still living at home, I'm going to give it all up and I'm going to university. And she was like, say what now? I was like, no, I'm just not happy. I'm going to go to uni. And thankfully, she was really supportive. And I went back to university. I say when I was older, I wasn't older. I was 20 when I went to uni. But I'd had that full-time job. I'd had the experience and the taste of what it was like to have a full-time job and wages and own a car and all that sort of stuff. So that really gave me the impetus to kind of knuckle down and try hard. So I went back, I studied HRM with CIPD accreditation. And then 4 years later, I left and started my working career. And I would say the rest is history, but you know, there's some challenges I overcame to get where I am today. But I'm really proud of what I've been able to achieve.
Yeah, nice, and so you should be. If you look at the HR profession, I guess some people might be listening who are considering getting into HR, and it is multifaceted. It completely depends what type of organization you're in and what part you're in. What would you say now you're deep into it are the main skill sets and the main things you need to be passionate about and care about to do it justice? Would you say?
I think to be successful in HR, you need to be able to leave your ego at the door. Because ultimately, I think you need to allow people to make decisions of their own accord. And there's no room for ego with that, because you are enabling people and pushing people forward to progress in their career. And whilst you don't necessarily stand back in your career, you watch people take promotions, you watch people get, stand in the spotlight. Certainly I have. And that doesn't bother me personally. But I think if that was your driver, then maybe a different type of HR would be more beneficial to you. I'm very much a generalist, but I specialise in people and culture. I don't know, maybe that's just the type of person that I am. But I think somebody who ultimately cares about the greater good over their own personal achievements would be successful in HR.
Do you think, how important is resilience? Because sometimes I look at some of the duties that, it's sometimes if anything goes wrong in the business, I think, oh, that's a HR job. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's probably a lot of businesses like that. If there's something that they're scared of, HR can deal with it. And it's often the hard, tricky stuff sometimes. Is that frustration? And do you think that resilience needs to be there, what do you say? Or is it just a different style of management you need to bring to the table?
All of the above, Mark. I think you're right. When stuff gets tricky, just, get HR to deal with that.
Yeah.
I mean, in Dyer, there's only 2 of us, and we've got 180 heads. So we can't do all of that. And I suppose that leads on to this, the people, the leadership development program that Sarah and I have wrote. But yeah, I think being able to be resilient in times of adversity, HR is the face of the organisation. And, there's been times when I've stood up in a canteen and, this is an actual true story. So I stood up in a canteen, it was the day before Christmas Eve, and I made 253 welders and platers. I put them at risk of redundancy. It was just before Christmas. And then I had to go home and kind of crack on with the rest of my life, and then have Christmas, and be happy knowing that, 2 days ago I had put a lot of people at risk of redundancy. That's the inner resilience you need. You need to sort of be able to pick yourself up after those hard days and then crack on with whatever else you've got to do. So yeah, being resilient, I think is quite key. And having quite an open mind as well, I think is key, because people are a strange bunch. There's nothing as queer as folk. And you think you've got somebody nailed down and they'll do something completely out of behaviour and you go, didn't see that coming. Yeah. And you have to just learn to sometimes just roll with punches with people, and then kind of figure out the best way forward.
And that story that happens, unfortunately. Manufacturing is a key example of that. And look, that's happening right now. For companies, unfortunately, because it's a tough market. And exactly that not necessarily the decision, but that act, often falls for the HR professional to do that, whether that's en masse or one-to-one, both very difficult. Mm-hmm. How do you do it? Do you just compartmentalize that and then deal with it perhaps by yourself at home, whatever? Or have you sort of built up strategies to try and mentally deal with that? Because they're really tough situations. Whenever I've had to let someone go, I think it's got easier sounds like a horrible word, but I think I've probably built up strategies to deal with it or to justify it, probably. Mm-hmm. But when I first started doing it, it kept me up all night. Really did. Hated it.
Yeah. I completely agree, Mark. When I was younger, I lived on a diet of red wine and cigarettes to get me through those situations.
yeah.
I've since developed better coping strategies.
Yeah, vaping and lemonade. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So no, I think when I was younger, that was sort of how I dealt with it, and I was quite angry at the situation. There was some poor decision making that I didn't agree with at the time, and but I sat on kind of my beliefs or my views. I subsequently don't do that anymore. If I've got something to say, I share that in an appropriate way. And then if we're in a situation where we are making redundancies and they're the only option after we've explored everything else, you know, and I have to do that. It's not something I do lightly, but I have been able to compartmentalize it. You know, running I do, and that's a good way to kind of expel that negative thought processes, or write it down. You know, write down angry thoughts, and then they're out, and then you can kind of move on with it. Plus, I've got two small humans. You know, two boys. I haven't got time for that stuff. So as soon as I walk in the door, like, mam. So yeah, I suppose life just changes, doesn't it? And you just kind of learn different ways to get on with stuff. But yeah, it was really hard when I was younger, really hard.
I'd like just to, you mentioned before about the training piece, and you completely right. I think there'll be a lot of companies there, a lot of HR listening to this thinking, yeah, every problem seems to land at my door, and that's the culture of the business. And I think a lot of businesses like that, that if a team leader or a manager can't deal with something, they just go that way. It's HR.
Yeah.
How do you start to change that culture and create a change? I know, Dyer, obviously, I know you're very passionate about the training piece and making people make decisions themselves. How do you start that process in the business, would you say? Can you tell us a little bit about what Dyer have done and are doing on that? Because it's a long process, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing. You know, I was laughing with Richard the other day, and we were talking about culture and like change and stuff. And I flippantly said, "Oh, just nip down to Sainsbury's, and you know, we've got a 2-for-1 offer." So, but no, it's not like that. It comes from senior leaders role modeling their expectations and their behaviors. So whoever is the more senior leader in the team in your company needs to be on board with behavioral changes, because it doesn't matter what people say, actions always speak louder than words. So if your team doesn't see the more senior leader buying into what you're talking about and the changes you want to make, then it won't work in the organization. And I've worked in companies like that in the past, and I've left companies like that in the past for that very reason. Fortunately, now I work at Dyer, and they're very much, the senior leaders, all of them are very much on board with creating a company that we're all proud of, that we all want to work at, where everybody can come and do their best at work. You know, we recognize that some people just want to come to work, do their bit and go home again, and that's completely fine, and there's a home for them at Dyer. We also recognize that people come to work and want something more, and we recognize that, and there's a home for those at Dyer as well. But I suppose in terms of training people, it's about you do the hard work up front, you role model behaviors up front, and that's hard, and then you call out those behaviors when they're not aligned to what you're trying to do. And the way, you know, you have to call them out in a way that's respectful and a way that you know is going to land with the individual. And that's hard in the first instance, but you really have to stick true to your values and the culture that you want to create, because you can let a culture emerge and it might be quite toxic, or you can build a culture that you're proud of, but that takes hard work and hard conversations at the beginning part.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And actually, you know, it takes a long time to change your culture, doesn't it? And your culture is going to do this. You know,
absolutely.
If I think about my business, we're small, 15, 16 staff, and it's cultures change throughout year on year to some extent. But you bang on, if it doesn't come from your senior leaders, it can't happen. Has to be that top down approach. And you're always going to get some, not say resistance, but you're always going to get some people who care more than others about that, and that's probably okay. The manufacturing is quite an archaic industry. It just is, and a lot that mentality of this is the way we've always done it, so why should we change? And I think a lot of feedback I get from companies and speaking to senior leaders or HR director, whoever it be, they feel that resistance that their team will not change. I know you're actively trying to do that, and you know I love the culture of Dyer. I've got my Dyer mug here, by the way, just FYI.
Yes, thank you.
But
Can we have some more, because somebody stole mine and now it's all tea stained, so can I have another one, please?
Yeah, absolutely. But how important is that values piece? And because there's a difference, isn't it, between just having them on the wall, and we were guilty of that a few years ago. We had them on the wall. I actually remember asking people what they were, and it was behind them, they couldn't remember. So we completely flipped it and we started to do everything about the values which they picked. How important is that in a business? And is that something that you're passionate about, would you say?
Yes, I'm very passionate about values, because for me, if my personal values are not aligned to the company who I'm working for, their values, then I'm working outside my value structure and decisions become difficult to make. I think we are transitioning at Dyer. We've got our SST framework, and that helps us make decisions. It helps us make good decisions as well, because the decisions we ask ourselves now is, is this decision closer or further away from these principles that as a collective that we've agreed on. They help us set expectations, they help drive our behaviors and our decision making as well, and also how people come to then expect a certain level of expectations. I've used the word expect twice there, but people then know how we'll respond in situations, because we stay as a leadership team aligned to our SST behaviours. So SST stands for Smarter, Stronger Together.
Apologies for interrupting this podcast with a very quick 30-second description of my business. Theo James are an engineering and manufacturing recruitment search firm based in Durham. We specialise in contract and permanent opportunities, from blue-collar, semi-skilled roles right the way up to C-suite level exec positions. If you're looking for any new additional staff or new opportunity for yourself in the industry, please contact me or the team. There'll be a specialist in your area waiting to help. I'm incredibly proud of this business and what we've built since our inception in 2015, and I would love to extend that service out to you. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the episode. Yeah, 100%. And you can see you walk in the door, you can see that. And we've said before, people, when you walk in that door, people greet you, and that sort of thing's first impressions. And that is, it's embedded into the culture, which is really important. The training piece, because I'm really passionate about training. I think it is one of the biggest no-brainers. If you look at EVP, which we'll talk about, I think training certainly is just the one, because that's the one that for me that keeps people there. I know is it 50-50 inclusive leadership training? Is that something you've just done? Can you tell us a bit about?
Yeah. So we worked with Lindsay Lee Britton and Lindsay Harboll. So I've known them both a long time. And so Sarah's my people partner, Sarah Churchill. So Sarah and I developed a leadership program internally, and it's a 6-7 month program which will roll out monthly. And so we've identified 28 people leaders. So these are current people leaders, or like leaders in waiting, if you like. So we're sort of strengthening our talent pipeline. But what we did in order to launch the program is we worked with Lindsay from 50/50 to create an inclusive leadership framework almost. And we're going to use that inclusive leadership to as the framework or the lens for the rest of the people leadership that we're sort of developing. So it's very much an introduction to. So phase 1 is about line management, protected characteristics, how to have difficult conversations, how to give good feedback, or effective feedback rather, because good feedback's always easy to give. Coaching conversations, those type of things that, people are promoted because they're technically excellent, and then their expectation is because they're technically brilliant that they'll then become good people leaders. But your payroll is the biggest expense on your P&L. It's huge, but it's the least amount invested. And I remember working in an engineering company many moons ago, and we bought some new equipment. It was £1 million worth of stuff. It's a big piece of kit. I don't know what it was. I knew it cost £1 million, and we hired somebody specifically for to look after this piece of kit. And then I said to my MD at the time, because the payroll was $500,000 a week, and I said, we don't train our people. And he was like, well, yeah, because da, 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 da. And I said, look, we've just bought this piece of kit and it was £1 million. We've just hired somebody in order to maintain that. And he was like, I said, so we spend $500,000 a week and we don't maintain that. And he was like, okay, I get you.
Yeah. Good
so
analogy.
because I was able to translate that to him in a way that he understood. Interestingly enough, my training budget went up by a significant amount.
£1 million.
Not quite, but it is, you have to give people, leaders, the opportunity to kind of be the leaders that they are, or that they want to be. And a lot of leaders they'll only experience leadership from the people who are their leaders, but if they haven't been trained, there's the ability to pick up negative or bad habits. But if we set the bar high with our people leaders, they can then help us build this culture of kind of being open, being open to change and ask. I often say to people, you have to seek to understand rather than be understood, because then you're always putting yourself in their position, and then you can get to a decision better if you understand where that person's coming from, because you understand their frustration too.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to put it, because I couldn't agree more. I think the biggest mistake businesses make is not training their managers, and we see it time after time. You just get brought into a room. You're great at your job. We're now going to make you a manager. Here's $3,000 more. Do you know what I mean?
Great.
Where exactly, but they'll train to do it, and it's a completely different job. And in essence, they've still got to do probably the current job and a manager's job, and they can't do it. And then, exactly like you say, those bad habits just trickle down because they're literally just teaching them, and you only really know what you know. As simple as that. Until someone tells you different.
Yeah, and you always choose the path of least resistance as well. And sometimes that is like, oh well, I'll just do it myself because it's easier and it's quicker. Yeah. But all you're doing is creating a rug for your own back there.
Completely agree. Employer value proposition, EVP, has always been like a buzz terminology for the last sort of 12 to 18 months, but it's always been there. It's always been around. It's just, I think companies, which is a positive thing in a difficult market, are looking at this now because of the surge in salaries over the last sort of 18 months have just gone astronomical. I think companies are going, right, we now can't pay more. In what P&L? What else can we do? So now they're looking at this and they're using these buzzwords. But I have seen some great stuff in businesses. And as I think training is, personally, I think it's the number one. I think it's the one thing you can do tomorrow, because it doesn't actually have to cost you any money. It's good to get external training, and we don't need to do it if you haven't got a training budget. Is that something that EVP piece, is that something you've always been quite passionate about? And have you seen that change over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'd say it's always been a thing. And I would say in the last 7 years, it's kind of started to gain momentum, and then even more so on the back of COVID. Because people had that ability to go, well, actually, I'm going to work from home, and actually, I've saved an hour a day commuting, and what else can I do with that time, or whatever. So I think for us, the EVP is really important. So if you look at our workforce profile, 82% of our people live within a 12-mile radius of our company. And then of that equates to that skill level is only equal to 16% of the workforce, of the Northeast workforce. And I only know it's 16% because Sean worked that out for me. So
he likes his data. He'll be ChatGPT, I'm sure.
So if I know I've only got 16% of the Northeast workforce that I can pull from, then that value proposition piece is unbelievably important, because we have raised our salaries to the maximum that our budget can afford. And we'll continue to raise and keep pace. We always pay above the national living wage. We pay above that. So because again, that's something that is important to us. But if I've only got 16% of the workforce, then I've got to come from somewhere. So for me, that's really important. I think if I look at the trends of why people have left Dyer in the last couple of years, they've either moved out of the area, they've gone for more money, or lack of personal development. And those, by and large, those are the three reasons. Now, I can't influence if somebody moves out of the area. And to a certain extent, I can't influence if somebody is paying more than us, but I can influence personal development. And I can influence that by creating good people leaders that then allow their team to take a step forward. We can create training plans. We can give people opportunity for personal development. And it doesn't always have to be upwards. It can be diagonal or sidestep, because to be a leader, it's not necessarily of people. It can be of processes, of projects, of anything really. It's about finding what people are really passionate about and engaging them in a way where they can make a difference at work.
100%. And it gets back to exactly what you said, empowering people. Do you know what I mean? That whole issue piece, that passion view is empowering people to be whatever they want to be, essentially.
Yeah. As long as people feel recognized and valued at work.
Yeah.
Like, that's the most important thing, I think. People just want to come to work, know that they're doing a good job, and go home again.
100%.
And if you can make that process in the middle nicer when they're at work, then that's where the engagement comes from.
Yeah. And you mentioned that community piece, because you're absolutely right. What good companies do, they build that community inside of work with the culture, but actually they make sure they are their employer of choice in the area. And I think it's very difficult, because in most areas you've still got a lot of big competition, because that's just the Northeast. That's probably any UK, particularly Northeast. There's a lot of competition in the area. How do you do that? Because you mentioned there exactly that. You and I both know people have left companies locally for a drop in salary to join Dyer Engineering because of everything we just mentioned. But how do companies start to build that community feel, if you like, and sort of be that employer of choice? Again, it's a long process, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I think your first step is to look at, why are you doing it? Like, if it's to tick a box, then you're not going to achieve what you set out to do. But if you truly believe that you want to be an employer of choice, then you have to bake that in at the beginning. It's part of your values. For us as well. So I'm the ESG lead as well. So ESG stands for, I'm going to have to remember this now, environmental, social, and governance.
Yeah.
Like, what does it stand for? I just rattles off the tongue now.
I'm glad you said that.
So for us, we have different people who kind of take a lead in different areas. I look after the social element as well as the overarching. And so for us, Stanley is a small area, and the majority of our people live in our area. So they are our community. So we spend so I suppose roll that back. The 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we've aligned ourselves to 14 of those. We've broke them down into 4 key areas, which is a sustainable business plan. We have a sustainable environmental plan. We have a social impact plan, and our governance plan. And so those are the 4 areas that help us drive our decision making, but it also enables us to work within the community. I'm going off track, Mark.
No,
what was your question that you asked me?
But no, it links in, because essentially it's building a community inside, but it's also building a community outside. And like you say, that ESG, that piece, I think people just see that and just go, oh, sustainability, and they almost go off a tangent about just solar panels and stuff, which obviously all this stuff is really important. But all this stuff you mentioned there, that links in with the culture and everything about your business, because it's more about the social piece and everything comes with it. And I think that's the important bit that companies miss.
Yeah, I think so. So one of our values is that we care. So we care about our people, and we care about our culture, our community. And then when I joined and I looked at the maternity benefits, and I was like, well, we only offer statutory. And they were like, uh-huh. And I said, so, but we care about our culture, our people. And they're like, uh-huh. I said, so can you explain to me why, if somebody's going to have a baby, that we then give them statutory maternity and paternity allowance? And I said, because those are the people that are then raising the next generation. And if they're not properly looked after, they're not going to come back to us. And then we're going to have to start again. And I said, and then, you know, it's so expensive to live these days. So if you're then reducing somebody's salary, they're going to push them into poverty. And these are our people. This is our community. Hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go back to the drawing board. And does our policies and procedures reflect our culture and our values and what we want to drive? And so those are the positive changes that we're making in order to reinforce that we care about our community, because our community that surrounds Dyer Engineering are our people. You walk into Tesco's and it's like a Dyer outing, especially at lunchtime. So, you know, you go to the one shop where everybody from Dyer Engineering goes to buy their lunch, you know, and people are earning their salary, earning their salary at Dyer and spending it in their local community. And so, you know, it all goes back to your culture and sort of doing the right thing, because it matters. Those are the things that matter to us.
And for me, I think, you know, I've been lucky enough to work closely with the business and see the inside. And I guess I haven't got that level of intimacy with every single company, but actually I've been in enough companies and worked with enough companies to know it's a difference. And we mentioned right at the start, but I think the importance of your senior leaders being the ones that really sort of start that process. I remember that we sat in a room with probably 25 you know, people who work for the business, you know, team leaders, that type of stuff. And you spoke about the culture, you spoke about SST, and I remember Richard speaking about it and him talking about the importance of what it should feel for someone who passes their probation for the business and gets that in hand and go, I've got it, and goes home and tells the family, I've passed probation, I've got a contract, and that stuff. I think that a lot of companies just take for granted that, you know what I mean, that people just presume, well, actually, you know, they're massive, but if people understand how big that is for employees and new people coming in, that's how you start to embed that culture of, I'm working in this company, I'm proud of it as well.
Yeah, and it goes back to the recruitment piece, and I suppose that's why we partnered with you, Mark, because you got us as a company, you got our values, you got what we were trying to achieve. So the biggest thing for me when I'm talking about recruitment is we recruit on values and we train on skill. I can train anybody to do pretty much anything. You know, I've made a career out of it. What I can't do is change somebody's core values. And when I, you know, earlier I mentioned, I know I needed to work for a company that was aligned to my personal core values. And that's important that we bring people in that would add to that value, that would add value to our culture, not just fit in with our culture, bring something with you. So that recruitment piece is so it's the most important step, because we've got to get the right people in the door. And once they're in the door, then we help them make a career out of it. But yeah, it's so we spent a lot of time with Theo James, you know, enabling our hiring managers to interview properly, and look beyond the standard questions of, can you tell me about a time when?
Yeah.
And so we've shifted our questions to, so if you're in a difficult situation, can you explain to me how you'd make a decision? Because that then gets to the core values of that individual, and are they aligned to what what we're looking for? And they're the people that we hire, because they're the successful hires. So fortunately, Sean was not yesterday, the day before was round, like he nipped round for a cover, just cause it was the annual. Yeah, he would, especially if it's Starbucks. But he was there for a reason. We were doing the annual review of you know, kind of how Theo James and Dyer are working together, and he shared something like, you've recruited for us, I think it's about 28 positions in the last 12 months, and of those there was only been 2 poor hires. And that rate is phenomenal. And it's down, I think it's down to the work that Dyer we do, but also the work that Theo James has done.
Partnership, isn't it?
It's a total partnership. And it's been a rocky ride. The first 6 months were tricky, but I think we worked together. We had a common outcome that we both wanted to achieve. And I always approach those conversations with you and with Sean and the rest of the team is, what can we do to make this better? And between us, we've been able to identify 28, smashing people. And they're still with us now. So, and they're still contributing. And they, one of them's been promoted anyway. So, they're really good people stories. But it goes back to that recruitment piece and finding the people that have the right values.
100%. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's where the partnership should work, because we should understand your values. But essentially, when they walk through the door, that culture and everything we're talking about has to be right. It has to be right, and it is. And that's the difference. And that's why you should be very proud of what you've done there as a business to really sort of bring people in, make them feel special, and make them recognise. One thing I'd like to just ask you about is, you mentioned a little bit ago about maternity pay, for example. Manufacturing is still very dominated by male men, is particularly the northeast, white male men. It's the way it is, and I'm starting to see slower change, but very, very slowly. And I think it's only changing for companies who actually proactively try to change it, because I don't think it happens organically. That change alone of looking at a maternity pay, that change alone can have a massive difference, because essentially, if it's just statutory, it's probably just saying, we've not really thought about this. It's just, you get the least possible legally you can get. But actually changing it, a female looking to work for the business, and go, actually, well, they obviously care. They obviously care about me and my long-term future, essentially, because you're removing that possible barrier. Just as manufacturing as a whole, I guess, what more do companies need to do for not just females, but underrepresented groups and the minorities? What more do companies need to do to sort of try and break that, would you say?
That's a big question.
It's a big interview question.
It is a big question. Look, we haven't got it right. We haven't got maternity and paternity benefits right at the moment, but we have a desire to make it right. And they're expensive. Let's not beat about the bush. And you can't wake up one day and go, right, okay, so I'm going to take maternity benefits from statutory to 6 months full pay. It's just not going to happen. That's a 5-year plan. Maybe even more. I don't know. I'd like it to be overnight, but that's a story for another day. But realistically, we haven't got it right, but we have a desire to get it right. I think in order to create inclusivity, you ask those people, what do they need? And then you marry that with what your company is capable of doing. And it might be that you can only give 5% of what they want, overnight, but over a 5-year process, our retention strategy looks like X, Y, Z. And year 1 we'll do this, year 2 we'll do this, year 3 we'll do something else, year 4, Dyer's on a growth plan, and we have, we've got a 5-year growth plan that we are aggressively working towards, and there's internal changes that are going on and that enable us to make that plan, because we know what do they say the definition of insanity is expecting something different but not changing.
Basically definition is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
That's it. So we looked at ourselves and was like, right, okay, so if we want a different outcome, we know we're going to have to do something differently. So we are starting to do things differently, and the conversation is not, in the next 6 months it looks like this. The conversation is, right, in 5 years, where do we need to be? And then we track back and go, right, well, we need to make a change here, and we need to make a change here, and to do this, and if we achieve this, and we can do that, and if we don't achieve this, then the outcome's that. And they're the conversations as a leadership team that we're having at the moment. So we haven't got it right. We acknowledge that we haven't got it right, but we also know that we will get it right. It's just going to take us time to get there. But I think, to go back to what you said about how do you recruit or attract, smaller minorities? For me, it goes to grassroots. So we're spending a lot of time now with colleges, and schools. So we've also partnered with New College Durham to create a learning partnership. So all of our apprentices go through New College Durham. So at the moment now we've got 14 apprentices,
Wow,
which
brilliant.
is smashing. Amazing. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's absolutely amazing. And they range from first years to fourth years now. But our ambition is to have 10% of the workforce.
Yeah.
So, every year it's not just hiring 6 or 7, but it's hiring 10, because we know that, more people's going to come out at the other end. But it's role modeling to those younger people. Actually, you can have a career and it looks like this. You have to go back to the grassroots and really engage younger people to go, actually, you don't have to be a YouTuber, which is what my son wants to be.
I think we all do now, mostly, yeah.
But you could have a job in engineering and it could look like this. You could wear a welding mask, or you can program a CNC machinist, or you can be a draftsperson, or quality engineer, or planning engineer. There's so many different opportunities working in manufacturing, not just the sort of the standard position, the standard role. You're either an engineer that builds stuff. There's lots of different career opportunities that we have, but for me it starts at grassroots. I can't change somebody's mind at 40, 50. I can change somebody's mind. I can influence somebody at 16 to make a different decision, or make them want to choose us.
100%. And it's even further back than that, isn't it? I think that the data now shows that, from like 6 to 10, that's the age where kids sort of turn. And my little lad's 5, and I can see his mind. He likes to see how things. He's not like me. I can't put a picture up. You know what I mean? He likes to understand how things are put together, and if they break, and I just think that there's probably something inbuilt in people that age. But if they're not then shown the path, then they'll just forget it. It's simple as that. So, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I'd love to be in a position where we can go into primary schools and show them, virtual welding sets and tabletop CNC machinists, and go, here's a piece of metal. If you press these buttons, you can get your name on it.
Yeah.
Honestly, amazing. Or the CNC, the virtual welding, you look through the mask, and I laugh at Glenn because he says, I just talk to people for a living, and I say that he clags pieces of metal together. Well done. It's both a little bit more complex than that. But if you can show, kids, 6 to 10-year-old, like you could do this as a job. It's really interesting because it's tactile, and at that age, it's something different, isn't it? It's a different opportunity. But people have to want to do that. And again, that's something that you don't do overnight either. It's something that takes time and investment, because nowadays people don't have that luxury of time, or smaller organizations, SMEs, don't have the ability to go, actually, I'm just going to hire somebody that's going to manage the outreach program, because there's not that return's not immediate. That returns sort of 15, 20 years down the line. So for us, it's about creating a big group of people internal at Dyer that are interested in this and actually don't mind giving up their free time to go and talk in schools. So we've identified those people, and then they go to talk to other people in schools as well.
I think it's amazing, because the more companies that do that, it's the only way we're going to start to change this culture. It is because people just there's still no awareness about how, because you're right, there's people probably still think of engineers as just this mundane job, which is so different, where it's unionized minimum salary. It was not. I mean, the salaries you can earn, the careers you can have, the opportunities you can have, unbelievable. It really is. And you've got to be in it to know about it, unfortunately. That's the problem. So it is. The more people do that, the better. Amazing stuff. Just finally, obviously, they're in a great spot right now. What the next sort of 12 to 18 months? Anything on the horizons? You mentioned growth. That's good for me.
We are. Yes, it is good for you. We had that conversation with Sean yesterday, the day before. Yes, I think some of the growth sectors for us is defence, is energy. Sort of, we want to be known as a global engineering partner. And that goes back to knowing really well what our company value proposition is, where we add value, how we can partner with organizations that work within our sectors where we know we can add value. For me personally, I enjoyed the energy sector because we work in renewables, and we talk about renewable energy, and that's quite sustainable because it fits nicely with our sustainability goals as an organization. So they're the markets for me personally, but as an organization, I think energy, rail, defence, they're our key markets, and they're growing markets as well. So that's sort of where we're going.
Exciting. But look, I just want to thank you. It's been brilliant. And all jokes aside, I did beg you to come on this podcast for many months, but you're excellent. And you know what? I think there are a lot of people listening to this, probably driving to work, wherever, going, right, yeah, we need to sort our training out. We need to look after our people. Am I doing enough? Because ultimately, this stuff takes some time, but one person can't change it, but it needs to come from the top. But I think what you've demonstrated there is you can work with your leadership team to empower them, to train them, to make them better people. But essentially, the people coming in below them make them better. And that's how you create a culture of just progressive training. And, I think the apprenticeship thing is amazing because because of COVID, there's been a big gap in the industry because training that time. But more companies need to do that to really sort of build this industry back to where it needs to be in the UK, which is an absolute powerhouse. So, but thank you so much, Maxine. It's been excellent. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mark. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Thank you very much for watching or listening to that episode of the Manufacturing Leaders podcast. I'm sure by now you realise how good Dyer Engineering are as a business and hopefully how good they are to work for. As Maxine kindly mentioned, we've been partnering Dyer Engineering now for 12 months and continue to do so. And we are currently looking for 2 machinists to join their factory in Stanley. As a business, they engineer and fabricate parts for the automotive, defence and rail industry, and they are growing and doing extremely well. By now, you'll know how good they are as a business and how much you look after their staff. So please get in touch if you are a machinist or know anyone who are looking for new machinist opportunities, but not just machinists. We're always looking for an array of people for Dyer. So please get in touch with Theo James to talk about that in a bit more detail. Once again, thank you so much for listening or watching this episode. Have a fantastic day.